And welcome back to Mixed Media Live. We actually got on here on time, and so far without any issue. So we missed you guys last week, but we're back this week for hopefully a good episode. We'll see. And we're happy to be here. If you didn't know, Mixed Media is a live show, happy. We're also happy. Happening every Monday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and we talk about everything art-related, whether it's business, news, I don't know, our reviews for things. Today I'm going to be talking some philosophy, so that's interesting. And we'll, sort of encourage the culture around art to be a little bit richer, a little bit fuller, a little bit more interesting, and perhaps a little bit more argumentative. That's fine too. It helps us to think about these things a little bit deeper. That being said, we'll introduce ourselves. So my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and a media entrepreneur, and I own a company called AWR.
Hi, I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and a media composer.
I'm Nathan Nestor. I'm a 3D modeler and video game developer.
Yep, and this is our little podcast. So if you didn't know, we have our podcast also streaming on all podcast platforms that you can think of: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn. I don't know. There's a billion of them, so pick one. The show is definitely on there. If the platform that you're on happens to have a little ratings button, like a 5-star sort of system, or if it has like a something out of 10 or a comment section, they're all really different from each other. But whatever it has, a little bit of feedback would be definitely helpful. Also, just realizing that the whiteboard is a little messed up. I'll fix that in a second. But yeah, that would be helpful. And if you have any comments on YouTube or Rumble or Twitch, where we're also on, feel free to leave the comments below. If you're here live with us, chatting is always welcome because it helps us to have a lively, good discussion around what we're talking about. And it's always fun to hear what people's comments are on the fly as we do this. With that, I guess, how are your guys' weeks going?
Been all right, I guess. Actually, I don't know about that. I was working on something that'll actually explain more in the news segment, and then my computer kind of just broke, so that was interesting. So I factory reset my computer because it seemed Windows was the issue, and that did not work, so that was cool. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to Linux instead of Windows, right? Now is the time, right? So I got Linux, and that's working great, Now I'm trying to do this thing called GPU pass-through, right? It's a method so if you don't know, Linux as an operating system is great, but it lacks compatibility for a lot of software that I like to use, essentially. Now, you can create what's called a virtual machine, which lets you run Windows software within Linux, essentially. But the issue is that it can be incredibly slow, and you don't have access to your graphics card specifically is the issue. So if you want to play, say, a game or do some game development, and software you want to use is not supported on Linux, well, it kind of sucks, and you're going to have poor performance on it using a virtual machine. So I tried to do this thing called GPU pass-through, and what this does is gives you native GPU performance on a virtual machine, right? And now, usually, if you want to do this, you have 2 GPUs to do this, right? I do not have 2, so I'm doing a even more niche thing called single GPU pass-through. I started working on it at 11 a.m. today, and I didn't even end by 4:30 p.m. today, and then I had like a class to go to, so I did that. So I'm very exhausted right now, like mentally speaking. From trying to figure that out. I'm pretty close, I feel like, but I don't know. It seems like for a lot of people, it just works. You follow the steps to do it. It's like whatever, right? Maybe take you 20 minutes if you just follow the steps. For me, no, my computer is not feeling it. Even though I have pretty similar hardware and software to a tutorial I was watching, multiple tutorials actually. It just it's close. It almost works. It just doesn't quite work. So I'm trying to figure that out. But until then, I'm pretty dysfunctional in terms of like being productive. So yeah.
So did you lose everything, like your files and stuff?
No, so actually, I took the opportunity to take out a broken drive from my computer because it's been chilling there for a really long time and clean my computer. So I guess that was nice. So I only factory reset the drive that had Windows on it, and that one didn't have any important files really. It just had a bunch of programs, just reinstall them, whatever. Um, I still have all my files on the other drive. Actually, I forgot I cleared that drive. Okay, but I have it all on one drive. That's the thing. I either put it on my USB, some of it's on USB, some of it's on one drive, and I cleared it.
Okay, yeah, that's a horrendous reality. I recently, random thing, like a few months ago, got a Backblaze subscription because the idea of losing everything was anxiety inducing. It's actually not as expensive as you might think to have your whole computer backed up, like on a daily basis. It's like, I think it comes out to like $11 a month or something like that. It's not that bad, for especially the peace of mind for someone who works with critical files all the time. You lose them and then everything is gone, and that's terrifying. Yeah. How about you, Ben?
I don't know. Mostly just doing lots of with my family. We had since the last show. My sister graduated from high school. My one brother went off to his first assignment in the Coast Guard off in Hawaii. So yeah, a lot of family stuff. I did watch the first film on my list of many films that I'd like to watch. War Horse, which it's a pretty good film, but really incredible score by John Williams. So I definitely recommend watching that if you have a chance.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, for me, I feel like, it's been a while since I was last here, that we were last here. So let's see, I went to a wedding of a cousin of mine, or ours, I guess, Nathan's cousin. So that was fun. And this last weekend, I went on a PA tour, a Pennsylvania tour, a central PA particularly. Went to, I want to say like 6 towns in 2 days. Tried to get a grasp of the area I'll almost certainly be moving to rather soon. Areas, I should say, because unlike the New Jersey, New York area that I grew up in, they're actually separate areas. Like, it's not just a mess of suburb like it is in New Jersey, which is it's weird as someone who never grew up in an environment like that to like exit a town and then enter another one, like that less dense sort of lifestyle. But I was digging it. I was definitely digging it. I loved the landscapes. There's just something charming about the whole thing. I really enjoyed Hershey, PA, in particular. Has a lot of cool things going on at once. I love me some coasters, as you guys know. So it's cool that Hershey Park is right there.
Have you ever been there, Irving?
Hershey Park?
Yeah.
I have not ever been inside Hershey Park. No, I was right next
Yes,
to it, but
I've been there, so you must have been there probably.
Maybe not.
I was there once.
Actually, if you remember it, then I should remember it.
I don't remember it well, so I don't remember anything that happened. I remember
going to Hershey, PA for vacation, but not actually going to Hershey Park. I don't think.
Did we not go inside the park? Maybe we didn't. I remember there was a giant. Was it a person in a costume? I think it was a person in a costume, like dressed as like a Hershey Kiss, essentially.
I know what you're talking about. We went to see. We went to Hershey, PA, and we went to the factory tour or whatever the factory exhibit thing, which is right next to the park. So,
all right,
yeah, that makes sense.
Say, I'm not really a real, I'm not a theme park person, but I don't know, having grown up where like Hershey Park was just like the thing, I don't know, I got so tired of it by the time like in middle school be like, the band goes, we have our trip to Hershey Park every year, and then the 8th grade, like 2 weeks later, goes to Hershey Park. I'm like, I never want to see this place ever again.
I can understand it from that perspective. Yeah. It's crazy because random tangent, but where me and Nathan are originally from in Jersey, there's Great Adventure, pretty much like in our backyards. It's like 15-minute drive to Great Adventure, Six Flags Great Adventure. And yeah, it's sort of the same thing, like school trips all the time, go to Great Adventure, it's sort of the thing. But like the crazy thing is though, in the coaster community, Great Adventure is like one of the premier coaster parks. Not a premier theme park per se, because it is very not good in the customer service and everything else department, pretty much theming, nothing like that. But like the coasters themselves are very well regarded. And I find that bizarre that I just, like, in the middle of New Jersey, there's just this random, extremely large thrill park in the smack middle of it. Yeah, so I guess in that sense, I'm kind of going to a similar situation. I'll be potentially living very close to a very well-renowned coaster park as well, Hershey Park, for their coasters at least. So, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was great. It was fun. Kind of can't wait to move, but there's a lot of moving pieces in moving, and it's a grind. It's definitely a grind. So, yeah. How about news?
All right, so I said my news would be somewhat related to how my week was, because I spent last week, or maybe it was the week prior, because we're gone 2 weeks. I can't actually remember, but one of the past 2 weeks, I spent making a little program that will essentially do my job of finding news for me, and it goes to various news websites and just like aggregates them essentially, and just gives me all the titles and stuff like that. And that way I don't have to I'm going to PCGamer.com, then I'm going to r/gaming news, then I'm going to, gamedeveloper.com. It's just like one place. There's no ads, there's no images. It's literally just text, just titles, and then it has a link next to it. I can go to the link if I want it, right? And I remember there was actually news that I wanted to say about that, and then I forgot it. And the thing is, I don't have my normal development environment set up on Linux yet, so I can't just open the project to rerun the code and just see what's there, So I don't really know. I don't really know what happened, but I do know something more recent is that E3 was supposed to happen, but it didn't because it's been canceled again. I don't know if I said that before, but it didn't happen again. But its place there was Games Fest, and then all these other different companies hosted their own little things and stuff. So essentially, if you go to any game news website, you just find X game is being released, has been announced, because there's been so many game announcements, or X game is moving to this platform, whatever. So there's a lot of noise I can't really filter through. Just know that there's a bunch of games coming in, or games that have been announced. That's really all I know that's happening. And, yeah.
Cool.
For me, the main thing I've noticed this week, not a really big news story outside of people in the industry, I suppose, but Justin Hurwitz is suing his former talent agency, the agency that represented him, WME, and Justin Hurwitz is the composer of La La Land and First Man, all of Damien Chazelle's films, and the details are kind of complicated. I'm not sure I really understand exactly what the allegations are, but it has something to do with them cheating him out of revenue on conducting the La La Land live in concert, live to projection concerts on a recent tour, and something like they literally took a $100,000 check that was meant for him and pocketed it themselves, something like that. So that's, you know, people in the industry say that, you know, there's nothing like that's not terribly uncommon for these some of these kind of lesser agencies to do bad things like that. But you know, getting some publicity, I don't think it's terribly popular, right? If you I experimented with this. I Googled Justin Hurwitz, and it took me a lot of scrolling on Google to actually get to anything that mentioned that. Everything is just, you know, composer of La La Land, in, you know, interview with the composer of La La Land. So I don't think it's something that's terribly important to the general public, but within the film scoring community, certainly being talked about.
Yeah, very interesting. Justin Horowitz needs to Hurwitz. That's what it is. He needs to fight in the court of public opinion. He needs to get some PR people so he can get some eyeballs on his case. Yeah, cool. In film news, a bunch of interesting release / production sort of announcements. So Jurassic World Dominion, I believe it was called, or is called, came out, was this weekend? I don't remember. I think this weekend was opening or something like that. I don't remember. But they made a new Jurassic World. It is out now, and it smashed the box office, you know, 143 million.
Never heard of this. It's weird.
Honestly, I was not, it caught me by surprise too when I saw my first ad for it, like I think on opening weekend, and I was like, okay, interesting. So yeah, despite though having a 30% of on Rotten Tomatoes and me seeing nothing but bad things about it, which surprises me zero because the last movie was really, really, really bad. Whatever Jurassic Park 2 was called, or Jurassic World 2 was called, I can't remember, but it was really bad. The first Jurassic World was at least fun. The second one was horrible. So yeah, I think that's interesting. I think there's a lack of family movies coming out in general. I think that explains that. I mean, what do you take your kids to, like, sort of these days?
I mean, I guess that's to some extent, but having seen the commercials for it when I was watching Top Gun the other week, I mean, is it the most I guess no, probably there's no like serious, you know, death in it, probably, but I don't know. Is it really the best little kid friendly movie? I don't know.
I think the tone is like catering to that sort of family vibe, I guess. I don't know whether or not it's. I feel like Top Gun is probably literally, well, okay, there's I guess one risque scene in the middle there that really shouldn't even be in the film because all the love aspects of this film are silly. But there's that scene, I guess. So I don't know. But I'd rather take my kids to Top Gun if I had kids. That's a certainty. So yeah, there's that Jurassic World. There's Joker 2, which I had no idea that was happening. Now, the first Joker I really loved. I think it was okay. Disclaimer. I have not seen Taxi Driver. I know everyone says that it is a clone of Taxi Driver. I know it's criminal as a Scorsese fan to not have seen Taxi Driver. I know. Okay? So don't kill me. So maybe it was blasphemous for me to watch this movie before watching Taxi Driver. And if I watched Taxi Driver, I'd be like, wow, what a ripoff. I don't know. All I know is that it's a really great film with Joaquin Phoenix absolutely murdering a role in a historic fashion, I think, in a way that'll be remembered forever. However, I had no idea Joker 2 was happening, and it's not necessarily obvious that a Joker 2 should happen, so I'm like very, very scared they'll absolutely destroy the credibility with this.
I think it's pretty obvious that it should happen just given the general environment that we are in, which is just to keep rolling out the same thing, you know,
yeah.
all these big films. So I wouldn't be, I don't know, I've never seen any of these films, but I wouldn't be surprised that it happened.
Yeah, I feel so conflicted because I'm not sure what I feel like the I can't spoil it, but the first film ends in such a way that I feel like adding to it destroys the ending, like just by nature. Like, but I can't really get into specifics. It destroys the implications of the ending by nature to have a sequel. So I'm confused about that. But Todd Phillips is returning to direct it, which is I mean, he did a great job with the first one. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Let's see. So other weird news: One Punch Man is getting a live action version.
Wait, my immediate reaction was no, but then I thought it's a comedy. Maybe they can make it work. It's possible.
I am, color me, absolutely skeptical that is a good idea. It is the most anime kind of concept you could possibly come up with, is One Punch Man. I mean, the entire thing is one big anime reference, one big anime parody. Like,
I don't know. Maybe they can. Okay, I feel like if they even made it like I don't know, like you know, worthy of existing, right? Like, it wouldn't like. The joke couldn't be the same. You know, it couldn't be the same style. Essentially, it couldn't be riffing at the same things. You know.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's gonna be very bad.
Are there images of this? Is this like a?
Say again.
Are there images of this?
No, it just entered pre-production, so there's nothing.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's a concept. I need to see. Okay, I'm interested. I mean, I just want to know like what it'll look like. You know, at the very least.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous concept. It should not be done, but they'll do it anyway.
Wow. There is live action Attack on Titan.
I know, and I don't want to think about that either.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
Some anime movies or shows should not be translated to live action for many, many, many reasons. Or at least if you're going to do it, you have to be extremely intelligent about it, about literally changing the medium, because you need to translate it entirely. But that's a discussion for another time. But the Fast and Furious director.
Oh, your mic changed. Oh, never mind, it's back. Oh, it's gone. Your mic is like, did it switch audio?
Yeah, it's like I think you switched. It's like the mic switched to a different mic, a very different quality for a few seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still not good. I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, it's definitely louder.
No, when you tapped your mic, I heard nothing. Is there a cord that you might have pulled out? No, it's still not good. Is it possible you could have unplugged a cord or something? All right. Okay.
Okay. I should be live. Okay, yes. I see myself in the meter. Y'all can hear me. I should be good now. Sorry about that. My USB plug was loose. Okay. What was I saying even? One Punch
live
Man.
action things. Yeah.
Yeah. The Fast and Furious director is coming to direct it. He's also the director who directed the last Star Trek in the trilogy, the J.J. Abrams trilogy, except the last one was him instead of J.J. Abrams, and I thought that was by far the worst one by a large stretch. And with Fast and Furious, though, I mean, I saw Furious 6, which I think he directed, which was amazingly schlocky beautiful, horrible, amazing movie. And I actually mean that in like the non it's so bad it's good way. I think it was purposefully that way, and it executed that very well. It was a fun, hilarious time. So I don't know. I guess it could go any which way. We'll see. Okay, last one. Oh no, that was the last one. Okay, so that's it. New releases and production announcements. That's my news. Okay, I guess we'll go over to the first topic. So if you're listening to this in post, it'll end here. However, I'm actually starting today. I had the wrong tile up, which I'm going to be talking about unlocking the Transcendentals. It'll be an interesting philosophical discussion on well, gotta listen to it. So go look for it. It'll come out right after this episode on the news, and you'll hopefully find a different perspective about these things. After that, Nathan will be talking about DiRT Rally, and Ben will be reacting to some hot takes as we do in our little tradition. So with that, let's transition. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. All right, here we go.
Mixed Media Movies.
Welcome back to Mixed Media. If you've been watching live, you've always been here. So thank you for staying tuned for this segment of Mixed Media. And today we'll be talking about the Transcendentals. One thing I've been meaning to do is we should probably say hello at the beginning of these sections, like each of us, before our voice randomly pops in later and people are like, oh, there's other people in this podcast. So my name is Irving.
Hi, I'm Nathan.
Hi, I'm Ben.
Yes, and they'll be interacting, piping in whenever they want as I talk about the Transcendentals, which is the topic for today. Before that, want to give a shout out to our supporters, 909 Crime and Rob Sharma on Locals, and you can join them at mixedmedia.locals.com and see all the perks there if you want to help us out. But the best way to help us out is to join our Discord, share our stuff, like our stuff. All that good jazz is the best way you can help. Okay. So, what are the Transcendentals? That's the first question. Well, I mean, there's many different... So, okay, here's what this episode is not. This episode is not about the debate around the philosophy of these things, right? I probably would have to do a lot of reading and thinking and writing to do a whole podcast episode on unpacking the philosophical underpinnings of the Transcendentals. That's not what this is. What this is instead is an interesting, think about it as more of like a meditation, right? Like a little bit of a how, if we assume some things, if we take some ideas and run with them, how might we apply them to the way that we view art? That also means that I'm venturing into the very scary realm of aesthetics, of which I have not studied, right? So this is my reflection. So before the philosophers come and attack me, I understand. Trust me, I understand. I love philosophy. I am not starting from first principles and building to this. This is not happening right now on the podcast. Instead, what I'm going to be doing is taking a lot more of a I guess you might think of it as a touchy-feely approach, but trust me, there'll be some good stuff to bite on, hopefully. For anyone who's interested in this topic, you can go read a bunch of academic papers and, fulfill your need for that elsewhere. This is not that. So, what are the Transcendentals? The Transcendentals, as I'll be talking about them, are truth, goodness, and beauty. This is the most common way of thinking about them. Again, there's a lot of different ideas out there. There's even a Chinese idea that's, I think it's truth, kindness, and beauty that is rather traditional. I find it fascinating. And so what are these things? Truth, goodness, beauty, and why these things, right? Again, without being rigorous. Truth, goodness, and beauty are said to be fundamental things, right? So we're talking about things that have being. So things that exist, you might say. The concept of being itself is a huge, rich tapestry of philosophies and whatever, and we're not going to get into that. But all that is those things that are being, right? Those things all have some attributes of truth, goodness, and beauty by virtue of their existence, right? So, for example, to make it hopefully a little bit less abstract, let's see, or actually here, I'll use an example that might tie in a little bit better later. Let's take something a little abstract, so maybe the being of it is in question, depending on what ontology you have. But let's say an equation, 2 + 2 = 4, right? So depending on your ontology, it may have being or not, or what kind of being, I don't know. Don't care for this discussion. However, the expression of a reality here is true. It is good in the sense that by virtue of existing, it has properties that we can identify as good. So let me give you an example. We'll get into it, but the fact that it's true is a good thing, but that's sort of the point. But it's also good in the sense that it is a useful thing, right? 2 + 2 = 4 is a useful abstract construct, etc., etc. And it's also beautiful, which is going to be sort of the thing I focus on in this discussion is the beauty aspects of things, which I think is the interesting thing if you're an artist. And if you ask a mathematician, oftentimes they describe their equations or a proof as particularly beautiful, which if you're not a mathematician might seem a little bit bizarre, but feels quite intuitive to people who are, mathematicians, that the work that they do is rather beautiful, right? There's a quality to it that is attractive, right? Okay. So that's a big overview. Now, what's interesting about these concepts is that they're interchangeable, right? Or that's not even the right word. They are the same thing. So truth is the same thing as goodness, is the same thing as beauty. They are the same. So I can, when I'm expressing the truthfulness of something, I'm expressing its goodness and its beauty, which is sort of what the mathematician is experiencing in that moment. And vice versa. So truth is good, beauty is good in a very literal sense. Good things are true, good things are beautiful, so on and so forth. You get the idea. They're concepts that are different only by the way that we or I should say it this way, in the way that we relate to them as human beings. So these things are all being itself, but we relate to these things in different ways because of our limitations. So we relate to beauty differently than we relate to goodness, than we relate to truth. We speak about these things in different ways. We use different vocabulary to express these different things. But fundamentally, they're all the same sort of relation to being. Okay. Enough with the things that philosophers will attack me for saying.
Are we gonna quote Keats, the Ode on a Grecian Urn here?
I don't even know what that is.
Oh no! The end. He's reflecting on this Grecian urn in I guess in like the British Museum or something like that, and the answer that is given to him in his reflection is truth is beauty, beauty truth, and that is all you know on earth and all you need to know.
I like that. Yeah, I mean that is an expression of that. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so this sort of topic came about because of a different topic that I covered in a video or podcast titled "Why Art Class Failed You," where I talked a little bit about the whole point was essentially the lack of art education in general, but also how that affects your palette, right? And the concept of a palette, right? A very basic overview of that. And then, I was like, we can expound on these things a little bit at least in a reflective sense, not a rigorous sense, and bring in these more abstract concepts that I think could make your art richer, or your understanding of your relationship to art as an artist richer. Okay, so let's see. So in that episode, we again talked about palette, and essentially we were discussing why we're supposed to focus on trying to get better at understanding those qualities that make things good art. And we get that word again, good, right? And in that vein, I'm going to postulate something to you, and you can either accept it or not, but we're going to run with it, right? Which is that those things that are beautiful are by nature also beautiful and good. And where they lack in those things, they are less beautiful because of it. So if something is lacking and a good property, let's take a tool, because this is an easier way to understand it. If we take a wrench that has a bent tooth, right, and it doesn't grasp the nut as easily, it is lacking a quality that wrenches ought to have. And so in that, it is lacking a good thing, and it is a less beautiful wrench, you could say. It is a much less...
There's so much philosophy in what you just said that could be could be unpacked.
Oh yeah,
could be debated or explained in agreement.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely a lot to unpack with these topics.
Like, why is a tool good if it works? Is that what it means to be a good tool?
Good question.
When is it a wrench and when is it not a wrench? Why is it not a seat?
Oh, we'll actually get to that because that's important. The object of things is important, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
Okay. So we can think of like even different professions, because we're concerned as artists as to how we relate to these things. So we can think of different domains here, having different sort of professions that we think of typically as associated with them. So in the sort of truth domain of things, those who are custodians of truth tend to be like, philosophers, mathematicians, scientists. That doesn't mean they're good at that, right? So they could be good or bad of any of those things. They could be good at those things or bad at those things. That has nothing to do with it. But those jobs are oriented towards the truth, right? So they're oriented towards ascertaining the truth, contemplating the truth, presenting the truth, etc., etc. And we have sort of the good domain. So like quintessential things you might think of are volunteers or doctors or things like that. Again, those people may or may not be functioning disorderly or not in those capacities, but that's the purpose of their vocation, is to be custodians of the good, right? And then in beauty, we have us, the artists. We're custodians of that beauty, right? So our job is to reflect on it, meditate on it, represent it, and relate to it in the ways that we particularly do, with the goal of adding to the amount of, I guess, full being that our neighbors may experience in their day-to-day lives, or in our own interior lives, or in our own domains of our houses, or whatever it may be. So there you go. So we're going to take for granted that everything is better if oriented towards those transcendentals. And I think some of that's a little self-evident if you really reflect on it, but let's take it and go. Okay, good. Now, I think this is where I'm going to really put my spin on this. I again have not read on aesthetics, but this is just my thoughts after thinking a lot about what the heck I'm doing as a filmmaker, right? So with goodness and truth, we tend to associate getting better with these things, or getting, I guess, a commanding understanding of these things as related to some sort of habituation, right? So like a mathematician, for example, practices certain types of proofs for the sake of generating new proofs per se, or maybe coming at old proofs in different manners and proving them through different manners, or critiquing proofs or whatever. But that all requires some sort of practice. It's not something you can just pick up and do, right? You need to habituate towards the understanding of the truthfulness of the things that you're doing, right? You could say sort of the same thing about, again, an example of a doctor, right? So a doctor needs to habituate themselves towards the service of another, right? So they need to hopefully be attentive, pay attention to details, sacrifice what what you might want in the moment for the sake of someone else who is in need. And yeah, that's what someone who is doing that well should be habituated towards. But we never think of beauty in this way. And perhaps, or not never, I should say, a lot of people don't think of beauty this way these days, I should say. We don't think about contemplating, accessing, creating beauty in this way that needs that kind of same devotion to the habituation required to make beautiful things, or understand beautiful things, or critique beautiful things in the same way that we look at goodness and truth. Now, I'm going to postulate that it actually is the same in the sense that, in the sense of goodness and truth as well, because they are all the same, right? We'll take that and go with that as well. So how do we sort of understand that? So that sort of relates to the idea of a palette, right? So I was talking about that in the last episode, and I think we can unpackage that by saying, okay, perhaps we can drop our egos a little bit and decrease our confidence in what we know to be the best things, or the things that reach towards beauty as a abstract transcendental itself the best. Perhaps we can decrease our own subjective understanding of those things, and for the sake of trying to understand the objective a little bit more. And that sounds a little bit weird, and again, a little bit specific to beauty, but it's not really. Like there's an aspect of even the truth sort of bearing aspects of things that also shares the same sort of quality. You can take, for example, Pythagorean theorem, right? You can understand it in a very objective sense, right? However, you start to try to break down the mechanisms by which you prove the Pythagorean theorem in a way that is offensive, right, to the pursuit of truth, and you'll find yourself in a lot of ways, I guess, in a subjectively angry, right? Like, so if someone starts to argue with you about the Pythagorean theorem and its validity or whatever, starts to break down mechanisms in the argument that seem to be integral to your understanding of truth itself, starts to break at the transcendental itself, right? You seem to get offended for something. Like, you get offended for the offense to something that should be attractive by its nature. Like, you should accept this thing, right? And so, yeah, there's a different emphasis in math per se, and maybe there's a different relation to how we relate to the things of math. But in art, we can try to understand it that way, and I think we can make sense of it. There's an interesting article, I can't remember where I read it, that presents it thus. Basically, it's the idea that if you could subtract something for something that is understood to be beautiful, and perhaps that example of itself, it deserves attacking and all that kind of stuff, because is there such a thing, and blah, 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 blah. But let's take it for granted for a moment. If I can subtract a quality from it, and we understand that thing to lose its some beauty because of it. So if I took a hammer to I don't know, the Pieta, let's say, or if I burned down I don't know, some rather universally beloved monument, right? And I've subtracted some quality that it has. I think, again, not from the first principles, not argued from a super rigorous logical perspective. I think on meditation, we understand and see that there's something wrong with saying that there is no substantive difference, right? That there's no substantive difference between that piece of art pre or post, right? Okay. So, this is important because once we accept that there ought to be a difference and that it is rather good that there is a difference and that it's true and in some objective sense that there is a difference, right? We can start to try to seek that beauty in a similar fashion, although it won't look the same because we relate differently to it, a similar fashion that we pursue truth and goodness. I remember, I can't remember, I don't know, I've had so many conversations with many people about such things, particularly in college, which I'm sure Ben remembers. But there's this notion of the relationship to emotion to art that's very particular, right? And I actually, I would agree with that. There's a particular way in which our emotions engage and relate to art. However, I would say that I'm a rather dispassionate person in general. Like, I'm like pretty, I don't know. You could formulate arguments that would make most people angry just by you uttering them, and I will sit there and say, is this valid or not? That is my personality, right? Like, I'm not a particularly emotional person. However, there's something, and for me to say that emotions are particularly engaged in art, and being an artist myself, there ought to be something that gets engaged, hopefully, when I'm seeing good things. And it does happen. That's exactly what happens. There's something that changes, right, inwardly. And I like doing that for other people. But it's not, for me, it's not something that my brain automatically does or is susceptible to very easily at all. I'm a very dry person in that sense, which I think if we were to say that sort of personality type or whatever is somehow defective for it, like we attach art to emotion so much that is somehow a defect in your person, is that you can't relate to art as well because your emotions aren't as, I don't know, sensitive or whatever. I don't think that's the case, just from my personal experience. I don't think that's the case, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that's the case, and I think that there's a lot about creating that engages the other transcendentals that I really enjoy. So I would say that probably the thing that I'm most oriented towards is the truth. It's something that I value very highly, right? In that my art tends to toy with ideas related to those things. It explores the truth and the goodness of things, how they interplay, the complexities, and all that stuff. But perhaps all art should, right? Like, I mean, even the more sort of, I should say, what's the word I'm looking for? The more sort of, I guess, for lack of a better word, the emotional art, right? Like, so that's really trying to tug at you. So think about something that's presenting a very like primal thing, like children, right? And the suffering of children, or something like that. Something super primal. It's pulling at your sort of natural instinctual emotions, right, with regards to children. Rather universal. That is still speaking to something true and good. Still, that is my contention, essentially. That even in pulling at that thing, you're still pulling at something that is core to us, that understands what is good and not good about a child suffering, right? And what should be the case, the truth of the moral values being presented there, right? We're still engaging goodness and truth in the same act of presenting a beautifully moving scene that's a little bit less exploratory and abstract and just more primal. It's still the same thing, to me at least. That's how I think about it. Okay.
How do you
go ahead.
square that with non-representational art, like a truly non-programmatic piece of music? Like, I don't know, let's just take Mozart's 40th Symphony. How do you say, how would you say that is oriented towards the true or the good, and or the good?
You'd have to explain a little bit more why Mozart's 40th Symphony. And
because that was the last piece I heard on the radio. That's why. But I could come up with any piece on earth that is non-programmatic, and I wonder how. I think we could like try and really dig into this, but I wonder, like, do you have any instinct as to, I don't know, what's a piece of music you like? Saint-Saëns Organ Symphony, I think you talked about enjoying. How would you say that is oriented towards the beautiful? Towards the true and or the good?
Yeah, I'm gonna cop out a little bit, but I'm not a musician. I don't pretend to have that sort of insight to things, and perhaps maybe it is truly that different for musicians, such that nothing I'm saying makes sense. I have no idea, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. I just know that I get the sense that there's something that the piece is reaching for that is more transcendentally good and beautiful, or good and true. There's something that it's speaking to that is beyond itself, that is good and true. I don't have a sense for what that means in more detail because I don't have that intuitive understanding of music. But yeah.
Okay. It's a good succinct on the spot answer. It's yeah. I'll say that I've gotten to do some like reading on aesthetics, in particular like 19th century aesthetics as it applies to music, and it's kind of an interesting field. I think you can go about it, at least in music, and I'm sure this goes for all the non-representational arts, or not even non-representational, all the less concrete arts. You can look at it like in pure, like, there's a pure structure, but that's not something that people really can comprehend. Most people can comprehend unless you like study that kind of thing. I think there are, and I think there are ways you can go about it more like what you're saying, Irving. In addition to like looking at that kind of like form and like construction sort of avenue.
Yeah, as you were talking, it trying to piece together my thoughts. I think that different forms of art have different ways of relating these concepts more or less abstract, right? So like, I mean, if we're not thinking about these things as distinctly different, if they're properties of being, right, then something like a math equation could be described as art but it's a very like, I guess, removed from much more removed from a, I guess, I don't know. I'm gonna put a pause on that. Maybe I'll come back to this topic and think about it a bit more. But yeah, no, I appreciate the insight. So anyway, okay, so. And actually, I have the example, and perhaps this is I don't know if this helps at all, but the example I gave in the past episode had to do with my experience with coffee, right? So as I refined my understanding of coffee and what makes good coffee, it seemed like there was less of a subjective quality to some aspects of coffee. Whereas, like, and this is probably a pivotal thing that happened to me as I explored coffee, is like realizing just how unnegotiable some aspects of coffee were, in the sense that in a relation to the good and the true, these things aren't as good or as true per se, right? That this is a good cup of coffee, right? However, there's other aspects to that cup of coffee and how we relate to it that are interesting, and maybe I'll tease that out in a moment. Maybe that'll help. I don't know. Okay, so sets and relations. That's what I was going to talk about next, which sounds like a little bit more technical, but I think it's a helpful way of thinking of things. So if we think of all the set of things that are, the things that have being, they all have some sort of aspect of truth, goodness, and beauty in them that is either is on some well, I'll say that for a moment. So, for example, the set of all true things, which really is all the set of all things that are, right? Because non-truths are non-existent. There is no 2 + 2 = 5 is a nonsensical, non-existent utterance, right? The total set of things that are true, which is everything that is, all have a relationship with each other in the aspect of being true. Or not with each other. I shouldn't say all things have aspect with each other with relationship to being true. Everything has a relationship to something in the aspect of being true. So, for example, this cup in front of me is white in relation to the time that I'm in right now. So this cup may not be white forever, right? Like in the past, it was not even a cup. The truthfulness of that statement has a relation that it has, and that relation is also in the set of true things. That relation exists, right? It's a true relation. Okay. There's like a set theory way to describe this. I'm not going to get into that. But you can do the same thing with goodness, right? So you can say that all the set of good things are good in relation to other things. So is it good for me to I don't know, is it good for me to jump out of an airplane, right? Well, it kind of depends on the context a little bit. There's a relational aspect to this understanding of the good, right? So it's a good thing if it's a fulfilling experience and I have a parachute, right? That's what makes it a good thing. It is not so much a good thing if I am jumping out of there and I'm going to die at the end of it. That is not so much a good thing. So there's a relational aspect to that. And we also relate. The interesting thing about that is that we relate to those. We are part of those relations, right? So even the thing I just said, is it good for me to jump out of the airplane? Or there are even subjective truths, right? Like, so it is true for me that I really love chocolate. That is a true statement. That is a truth in relation to me, right? Now, if we extend this to beauty, right, what we can say is that there are a lot of relations that are rather subjective. So, I don't know. Well, actually, even the statement I just made, I really like chocolate, right? Or let me make it a bit more clear in an aesthetic sense. Chocolate is more appealing to me than, Brussels sprouts, which there's a conceivable human where that's not true, where Brussels sprouts are more appealing than chocolate. And there might be many reasons for this. It doesn't actually matter why, right? So, for example, I may have taste buds that are oriented different from the person who likes Brussels sprouts more. They might have different taste buds. As for visual mediums, my rods and cones and how they're oriented are different, right? The way my eye is shaped is different from everyone else here on this podcast, right? And so these are all relations, or these are all causes to relations that I have with aesthetic things. So the way that I like color, or I see how colors blend together or complement each other, is going to be different by nature than the way someone else does. And this generates a bunch of subjective, in the sense that there's a subject, a person, who is part of the relation, right? So these generate a whole bunch of subjective understandings. But what you notice, though, is that the set of those statements regarding the beauty of a thing does not lose its relation to beauty itself. Like, there's nothing about that. There's nothing about me enjoying something because of the way I'm physically made up, or because of my culture, or because of the time I live in, or because of the context I live in. So, for example, a film may hit different, right? Because I'm living in 2022 versus 2022, right? They might hit different. Well, there's a whole bunch of relational things that are different, right? Like my set of facts are different. There's a whole bunch of things that are utterly different about me experiencing the same film. And those things are all subjective relations, but that doesn't negate the relationship of the set to beauty itself. Namely, that all those pieces of art, all those things, all those objects have a relationship to beauty. You see? Does that make sense? The transcendental aspect of beauty. So you can have this dual thing. And I think this is where a lot of people, or maybe I defer. I don't know. Again, have not read up on this topic, but I think the way that I tend to think about things is that there's a whole bunch of relational beauties that involve subjects that have an objective quality to how beautiful they are. Let me give you an example. So I may make a film that caters to 20-year-olds who like punk rock music, right? It's about some punk rock musician, right? There's a certain limited quality to anything I generate, frankly, but let's use this example. There's a certain limited quality to the amount of relations and the set of beautiful relations that I can access, right? So some of which I can't access, like people who don't like punk rock, right? Like if that's the limiting factor, I actually cannot access that set of relations, right? I can't create something that has a relationship to those things in a beautiful way, because that would be a contradiction, right? So I generate something that necessarily has a ton of subjective components to myself, to people who consume it, but those relationships, those subjective relationships, don't cease to be objective. And in fact, there may be, and I would argue there are, objective relationships that thing has to an objective thing. And perhaps I think if I thought about it a little bit harder, I might be able to express this in a set theory way, which is that the total set itself needs to, if I'm saying that beauty is a transcendental, it's fundamental, it pertains to all things that are, the set itself exists, right? Okay, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because I think that might get a little bit too abstract. I'm not drawing, so I'll back away from that a little bit. But here's what I put forth, is that we can think of things in a way that's both subjective and objective. And we can think of things in a way that we have more subjective or objective, both, relations happening with our particular piece of art, which, you may argue, makes a thing more beautiful, right? So, okay, let's get more concrete with it in terms of how it might actually affect the way we do things. Okay, so in relation to filmmaking, there's a lot of, and you know, it's good to ask, it's good to explore these things because it's good to explore, right? But as of late, we've got this sort of, and it's pervasive. It's everywhere. When I was in college and I took a few film classes, it was there too. And and you listen to executives or directors talk or whatever, it's very pervasive. There's this deconstructionist sort of attitude towards film that's persisted for a long time. It's still there. Even in blockbuster movies, believe it or not, there's this sort of deconstructionist attitude towards the whole apparatus of film that is very pervasive today. What I mean by that, what they mean by that, and the way a lot of people express it, is as if they're asking questions, right? However, I don't think, if we think about this a little bit more abstractly, I don't know that that's what's actually happening to create these particular types of films. So, a film that seeks to deconstruct the idea of a moral structure, period, right, or something like that. That's its goal. May or may not ask good questions about moral structures, right? So it may just seek to be destructive in of itself, which is impossible in my understanding of things, at least. It's impossible because those things don't exist. Those things, that which is not good, does not exist. So you start deconstructing something that is good, right? You're not going to generate something in its stead that is good. It's not a possible pursuit. They can't even make a film that is like that. Instead, the same sort of director might make a better film that asks good questions about moral structures or that which is good, right? And those films may not have answers, or they may not speak to the truth of any of those moral principles it's exploring. However, it is beautiful in the sense that it is pointing to them. It is asking you to think and explore them, which are good things. It's engaging our human capacity for exploration, understanding all the things, right? So it's still engaging a good thing, right? So a good example would be, in my opinion, would be, let's see. Oh, I'm not going to think of one off the top of my head. But okay, actually, let's take a book, which a movie is based off of, which is Fight Club. So the book and the movie actually have completely different points. Funnily enough, the movie is very much so interested about biting down on a moral center, whereas the book is interested in finding out what morality is. So they're completely different in motivation. In fact, the author apparently likes the movie version better. Quote unquote, it is less depressing. But the interesting thing about the book, right, is that there is unlike the movie, there's no bite at the end down onto some moralizing principle, right? So there's no understanding that happens or come to understanding at the end of the book, right? However, the book isn't necessarily, for at least that particular reason, less beautiful because of that. The author is very intelligently searching for if there is an answer and what those answers might be, which is a good thing. It is a good thing that a human being does that, right? And there's something that points to the abstract transcendental of truth that is good there. So I think one critique I have of sort of deconstructionists or whatever you call them is that they don't distinguish, and they'll call the films that do both things of equal merit, right? Whereas, okay, and maybe bringing in the empirical here isn't helpful, I don't know, but you look at just like the performance, like the straight performance of the two categories of things, and one seems to speak to people a lot more than the other, right? One seems to attract people, right? A lot more than the other. And yeah, I don't want to get too literal with that, because I think a lot of people might interpret that as well. What about experimental film that takes apart certain mechanisms or something like that? What about films that seek to just string images together? Well, there's a sense in all of those things that they're seeking some aspect of that goodness and truth. I've seen plenty of experimental films, and of varying degree of I think success in an objective sense of reaching for that beauty. and maybe there's subjective senses in which I will never relate to, and that's fine. Those films that have or that experiment with something successfully tend to have a sense in which they are taking something that isn't necessary for reaching goodness and truth and subverting it or changing it or breaking it apart or something interesting. And even that exercise of doing that is good. It's praiseworthy. It's someone who is very in tune with their craft messing with it. It produces an admiration for even the person who did it successfully, because it's very hard, right? Whereas the person who doesn't do this successfully, film students, they tend to just say, it's cool to deconstruct things. Let me just slap everything on there because deconstruction. That's not a possible goal, in my estimation at least. That is not helpful, because there's nothing you're doing. You're literally trying to achieve doing nothing. It's not possible. You can't do it. You must reach for something transcendental. That's something that transcends. Okay. That's my summary, essentially. Or summary. Those are my reflections on the idea of transcendentals. And I think if you take some of those and maybe, I don't know, make them more rigorous, I don't know, think about them a little bit deeper, at least just take a moment to meditate on them. And come at your art that way, right? I think you can make everything more meaningful, at least to yourself. And on top of that, I think you'll make better art. That's my guess. But I think you'll make art that speaks to people a lot better. That's my second. Any thoughts on that rather abstract topic? Skeptical. No? Okay.
I mean, it's hard to, I don't know. Should appeal to a lot of people be a goal, though?
No, not necessarily. Okay, I should put it this way. If your goal is to appeal to a lot of people, if that's the goal speaking to most people who are probably listening to this and they're an artist, they're probably putting things out there for other people to appreciate. So if that's your goal, I think thinking about these things would help you. If your goal is for yourself, then there's a whole bunch of things I can't, I suppose, help you with in that regard. Birdsong Studios comes in at the end and says, I just hopped in. Mind re-explaining the whole segment? Oh, okay, just kidding, of course. Okay. I was like, no, I do mind. That's going to be impossible. Yeah.
No. Okay, then if we take the painting, the treachery of images, right, where it's like the pipe, and it says this is not a pipe, right? I mean, it's true in that it's not a pipe because it's a painting, so it's true in that sense. But it also is a representation of a pipe, so that's not true.
Well,
is it beautiful? Well, I mean, maybe it's a nicely drawn pipe, but it's not a pipe. So,
well, see, I think that's thinking a little bit too literally with what I'm saying, right? Because what is the point of the painting? Because if the painting's point is to grasp at an understanding of contradiction, then that's actually a noteworthy thing, right? Whereas, like, the statement itself is not actually the point. If the point of the thing is to lie to you, right? Like, and convey a non-truth, and that is its subversion and stuff like that, then I'd say it's less beautiful. That would be the way I would think about it.
You're saying I'm confused. the truth in an art piece, does that come from the artist's intentions?
No, so it has to do with what you're, well, I would say either asking about or exposing. So yeah, okay, I guess it does have to do with intentions, yeah. But like I suppose if you set out to do, and this kind of goes back to my general idea about understanding good or bad films in general. But if you set out to do something, if you set out to do something and you fail at doing the thing, I don't think that's a good thing, right? That actually is just not a good thing, I would say, in an objective sense. So yeah, there's even that attached to it. Yes.
So, and this is not confined to art, right? This is everything, right?
Yeah.
So I know, like, we're not really supposed to get into the inner workings, but I don't know if it's too far in, but take with the wrench example, right? So I want to say, okay, if you're set out to make a wrench, for example, I made a wrench that works really well. It's a good wrench, right? It's a beautiful wrench, whatever, right? Now, assuming I assume usually when you intend to make a wrench, you probably intend a wrench that is also pleasing to look at, for example, as well, and stuff like that. So there's a bunch of other stuff. But let's assume just a simple, like, trying to make a wrench. Make a wrench. Now, let's say you set out to make a wrench, make a screwdriver, for example. Is it a bad screwdriver now? So you can apply this.
You set out to make a wrench, but you've made
right.
a screwdriver.
A hypothetical situation doesn't make any sense, but this is what happens, right?
Well, if you say is this a beautiful wrench, the answer is no. But like if you say is this a beautiful, okay, actually, here I played it this way because I don't think about it in terms of is it beautiful or not beautiful. I think about it as what is the set of things in it that make it beautiful, and is it lacking something, right? So if it has more attributes of goodness, then it is more good. Same thing for beauty, same thing for truth, right? So in this sense, right, it is not good. It is a detracting factor, right? It is not good that the person set out to make a wrench and made a screwdriver, which is a relation the person has with the screwdriver or wrench. Huh?
So the screwdriver itself, or wrench, whatever, the item in question, is not necessarily a bad item, then.
Things don't... Wait, say again?
Wait, what is bad then in this case? What is it that
it's bad that the person set out to make a wrench but made a screwdriver?
But what is the item? Not as a wrench or a screwdriver. I mean, is it good or bad, or is that not relevant?
Is what good or bad?
The wrench screwdriver thing.
What?
the item that was made, the screwdriver.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. There is no like it's a good screwdriver or a bad screwdriver. The fact that it exists means it obtains good and bad thing or good things at least, right? So it could be, I guess, perfect and only obtain good things, but it might lack other things. In this case, it lacks the fact that its creator intended to make a screwdriver, intended to make a screwdriver.
Okay, so it can
my
be
sets
relatively...
have all sorts of relations in there. So the relation between the creator and the created object is part of the set that belongs to the object too, right? So
it's like a relational what do you call it? Relational database. If you understand the reference.
No, but
okay, never mind.
I'll believe you.
SQL programmers understand.
So like the set of things related or true things or whatever, good things, beautiful things related to the screwdriver includes the relationship between the creator and the created. So the relation is in there. So if it's lacking the relation, which would be good to have, of the creator intending to make a wrench, then it is lacking in that sense. But it may be.
It could be a greater than average wrench, greater than average item, whatever you call it. But it can't be perfect because it was not intended to be that way.
There you go.
Okay. Now, the reason why I asked because I was wondering how you apply it to movies, for example. You make a movie that's so bad that it's good, for example, right? You didn't intend it for it to be that way. So can it be? The question was, could it be so bad that it's good, or is that not even possible because it can't be good? But I guess, the answer is that, yeah, it can still be good. It just can't be perfect. It's losing out on some attribute of like intention from the whoever created it, essentially.
Yeah. Does
this mean that no movie can ever be perfect? Sorry, maybe this particular subtopic has extended its stay. But does this mean that no movie essentially can be? Well, I guess it's kind of intuitive that no movie can be perfect, but at least on the just the basis that a movie that say a large scale movie, I mean, involves multiple people, all who cannot have the same vision, just simply because things like just like a lack of communication being perfect, for example.
You have to repeat that.
What happened? Oh
no, I got lost in what you were saying.
Okay, so what I was saying is like a large-scale movie cannot be perfect, or really a movie involves more than 2 or more people in creation. So essentially, most movies cannot be perfect because both the multiple creators cannot be perfectly in sync with their intentions, because it's impossible to communicate their intentions perfectly, their words.
I don't know that that's actually necessarily true. So you can be in sync on intention of how you create something. I mean, but I'm saying like on a very literally perfect way, Oh.
This is not possible.
In my opinion, you can't generate anything that's perfect. So
yeah, that's why before I prefaced that by saying, well, I guess it's just intuitive anyways. Like there are probably a billion other ways you can think about, like it just can't be perfect, like you could have.
Well, okay, if you mean perfect in the sense that it fulfills all the intentions of the creator, then I think that is a practical matter that's impossible. But in terms of perfect in the sense that it maximizes good, that is literally impossible because it isn't goodness itself, which is the only thing that maximizes the good. So
right, okay.
In both senses, the perfect is impossible.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. Okay. Juicy philosophical conversation. I love it. But if you like that, hit the like button. Cool. Yeah. If you have any comments about that at all, I would love to read. I love talking about these things. I love thinking about these things. I don't tend to, back when I spent time on these things, I tend to think mostly about metaphysics. It used to be the thing that I loved the most. And I would come at it from first principles and try to understand arguments and stuff like that. However, this is not that, and I don't have that kind of time anymore. So I come at it from a much more meditative perspective. So if you have any paragraphs of how wrong I am totally glad to be corrected. I have no care in the world. Like I said, I'm pretty dispassionate about such things. So if you disagree with me, I would love to hear it, because it would make myself better to understand these things better. Or if you have interesting things to add. Oh, go ahead.
I'm fairly certain you can hear it from Aristotle. He'll probably tell you why you're wrong. You just read on his.
Well, Aristotle might agree with me. I'm not actually sure.
Yeah, he might. I don't know. I used to read a little bit of Aristotle, and then I forgot everything he said, pretty much. So I cannot remember.
Yeah. Okay. My light went out, so that's the cue. Cool. Yeah. This is a segment of our show. Right after this, we'll have an Arguing with Reddit segment, which Ben will be heading up, reacting to hot takes about everything music related from Reddit and beyond. And then after that, Nathan will be reviewing the game DiRT Rally after 5-6 years since the game has been released. So some interesting post-peak sort of review of DiRT Rally. So if you like that kind of stuff, stay tuned, subscribe to wherever we are, and you'll be able to see those things when they come out. For now, if you're listening live, sup. Y'all are awesome. Shout out to, again, 909 Crime and Rob Sharma for supporting us on Locals, mixedmedia.locals.com. And shout out to all those who have stuck around this whole time, listening to me ramble. So with that, we'll transition to our next segment. So here we go.
Mixed Media Music.
All right, welcome to Mixed Media, and today this is our Arguing with Reddit section, where I get to respond to hot takes from Reddit or other parts of the internet that I have found for myself, and two that my co-hosts have found for me that I haven't seen. So you get my raw, on the spot thoughts. And again, arguing with Reddit music segment. If you are new to the podcast, I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and a media composer. So I'm going to be focusing on things about music. All right. So why don't we get started?
Okay, so this one is from Nathan. Nathan, if you want to introduce what this is.
I don't know what it is. Let's see. I forget. I cannot see it yet. I'll wait for it to appear on Twitch or YouTube. Give it a moment. Wow, the delays were. Okay, there it is. Okay, so, right here. This is what this is about. It's about the future of music, and this is from r/music. Post is only 3 hours fresh, so it's not much when I as of now, I guess. So it's not really much replies to look at, but basically the question is, as you can see in the title, where is music going? Sort of, what are the trends leading to what will be the next great genre? I guess any instrumentation that might maybe is coming more into the forefront as of late, and what are your predictions?
Wow, that's a hard topic. I mean, it kind of depends if you're, what kind of subfield of music we're talking about.
Okay, am I yeah, I thought about this too. I was like, this might be very general, and like the fact that there can be various genres doing their own thing, or various groups doing their own things that are probably not even related a lot of times, So perhaps in areas most, or maybe if you do see some broad trends, then that would work too.
Okay. Well, I would start by saying that, in general, in art, and I think in probably things outside of art as well, there's kind of this pendulum effect, right? Where we swing to really far in one direction in some way, the next thing is going to be a reaction in the other direction. And I think that's a good guiding principle for a lot of things about humanity, but we're going to focus on art and music in particular. So I think that's at play. But if, for instance, we're going to go back in time here. If you, and this gets more complicated, but pendulum isn't just if it were truly that obvious, right? We'd only have two kinds of art in some way. But it's kind of like a pendulum that kind of goes in 360 and probably into 4D too. But there is some kind of pendulum motion, right? If we go back and you are Gluck, Christoph Gluck, who's a composer who's kind of writing. He's kind of there at the end of Bach's life, Johann Sebastian Bach, and all the way up till his death, kind of clears the way for Mozart to get his first position. And he's an important figure in the history of music, but not a figure that anybody knows unless you care about early classical opera. Okay, but we're going to consider him like the epitome of early classical music, the unadulterated classical era music. Okay, so, and Matt, we can debate that too, but we'll take him as an example. The pendulum isn't so clear in that, if we look at him, well, this is what he stands for. So we can predict we're going to get Beethoven in less than a generation, and that then music is going to go in the direction of Wagner shortly after that. You're right. It's we could say that yes, there are some rigidly formal principles that we're operating from in the music of Gluck, that when we go kind of away from that to less rigid and more programmatic instead of absolute, non-referential, right? Not for Gluck is writing operas, but if we're taking a early Mozart symphony, it's just a symphony. Okay, it's not about anything. Okay, in Wagner, we're getting to music that is about something, and that's the guiding principle, is that we're telling a story with the music. And of course, this is really broad strokes. There are other things that, like, that happened in that era as well, like the development of different instruments. There are philosophical things that happen. There are historical forces that happen. But we could probably say that yes, music may end up in a more expressive land than it is with Gluck, because he's kind of, not that it's not expressive, but it's not emphasizing personal expression. The thing is that music, as the world has become, we leave our kind of Eurocentric, I'm not really answering this question very well, but is really kind of leave this Eurocentric viewpoint, and we really consider the global world that we live in very interconnected. There are a million strands, and to each of them we might have this kind of unpredictable pendulum effect. Okay, so that's my broad response. I don't know really in what way at this point, have we kind of reached instrumental perfection? And if we come up with anything new, I mean, people don't want to let go of the old. We can always come up with new synthesized sounds. And I think that, there'll be more playing with that. In what specific way, I don't know. I think if we look in film music right now, I think my prediction, this is obviously kind of the area that I know most in some ways. I think in the world of film music, there's kind of a tension where some people are a little bit tired of everything kind of sounding the same, and that kind of, and not to, as a knock against Zimmer, but in that sort of world. And at the same time, people, films I don't think are made with and I touched on this when I talked about music for animated films. There's a kind of sense that unless you're John Williams, most films can't have gigantic orchestral scores. It just won't feel authentic anymore. But I think there's a middle ground that my prediction is that we will sort of reach, where we're not just kind of rinsing and repeating the kind of formulaic synthesized sounds that we get so often, and we're not going to get a John Williams again either. We're going to get something more like John Powell, who's kind of somewhere in between both of those. That's my prediction for film music, I would say.
Cool. Let's see. Who is next? I think this one is from Producer Wife. Let's see if I'm correct here. And I have no idea what it is either, so this is not yours, right, Ben?
It doesn't look like it, although I have difficulty reading it.
Okay, yeah. I think either Reddit changed its format.
In the thing.
Oh, okay, I see. Either Reddit changed their format, or my live editor did something weird and my format's all messed up now. It doesn't fit in the nice box I made. But it says the majority songs are very, I guess the majority of songs are very formulaic. The issues is that many songs rush to get to the chorus, then after that they devolve into being the chorus only pretty much. The first verse will be the longest, the chorus plays, the second verse and any of that are pitifully short. That's when the song devolves into being the chorus only. Jesus of Suburbia by Green Day is one of the best songs ever written. There's parts to the song they're in transition into each well and could be their own small songs. Okay, I think we get the point, mostly. So I'll stop reading.
Okay.
When I first, I'd like to point out that this is on r/unpopular opinion. I don't think that's an unpopular opinion, but all right.
Yeah. I mean, okay. When we're looking at popular music, sure. Is there a pretty, is there kind of, are there templates for doing that? Yes. Are there lyrical templates? Yes. And the people who perform these often don't write these things. They hire, farm them out to songwriters who do the same thing for everyone, and they just tailor it to the person they're writing for, to whatever specifications they're given. Yeah, I agree. This is probably not really an unpopular opinion. I'm not sure that I could sit down and tell you what the formula is for a lot of things, especially in 2022, because what's the last popular song I've listened to? I don't know, honestly. Or recently released thing. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either, because in some sense, a lot of music and art, you go back to Irving, and if you want to look at an earlier segment we did, Irving talking about the transcendentals of truth, beauty, and goodness as they relate to art. I think that's having some general formulas, outlines for things in all the arts. I think that makes sense with some of the things that Irving was saying about what is. I guess I was alluding to it too. What is beautiful and good and true in a kind of abstract sense. You don't have to admire the symmetry of form of some kind of symphony or something. You don't have to understand that, but it may be there under the surface. And so I don't think that's a bad thing in and of itself. Nor do I think it's necessarily a good thing that in this song this person references that each part in and of itself could be its own thing, could be its own song. I don't know that that's inherently a good thing or a bad thing. In fact, I kind of find that effect frustrating in a lot of music, where I'm like, wow, there's so many little parts that are also good, and if they're not developed, and I kind of want that. And maybe that's also a good kind of frustration. It's a complicated question, but sometimes I feel frustrated by that. Or sometimes I'm like, well, yeah, it's good. It's like gem that's kind of hidden out there, and I get a brief glimpse of it. So I don't know. It can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. But my impression is that as with a lot of art these days, and it's probably true, even without taking into account algorithms figuring this stuff out. But I think the algorithms and AI probably make it even harder to get away from formulas, because art's always, of course, about making money. If you're an artist, but now you have the tools to attempt at least to try and make something as popular as possible. And if we find something that works, we're going to repeat it. Marvel, right? Now, you might not think it's great art, but does it make a lot of money? Yes. So you just rinse and repeat it. I think the same thing applies increasingly to music and to a lot of other forms of art. I think, generally, yes, if you went back to the 60s and 70s and listened to all the, top songs, I think you'd find a greater variance in a lot of formal aspects and lyrical aspects.
Yeah.
I like to defend one genre for its repetitiveness. I think it's almost required part. It's EDM, and I've learned a lot about EDM, and it's sort of like so I think to separate EDM from electronic music, these are not the same thing. EDM is a very specific subcategory of electronic music, and it has this very specific culture that almost requires repetition or formulaic structure, right? And there are two reasons. One, DJs are a lot of the culture, and remixes are a lot of the culture. So DJs being a big part is like you might have this is not as big of a thing as it was back in the founding days of EDM, but when you're making an EDM track back in the early days of EDM, you are expecting a DJ to put it on a set with multiple other EDM songs, and they have to be able to smoothly transition to each other in a nice way, and having them be somewhat predictable and not absolutely crazy and really hard to mix into something else. That is very important, and that's also why the BPM is also pretty standardized. Like, what was it, 138 or something like that? Is like the plus or minus a couple, but it's like usually around there if I recall correctly. Was it 168? I can't actually remember. It's one of those. And the second reason is remixing, and so I think because remixes also, which are I think those are still fairly popular in the EDM scene, and you almost want the songs to be almost like a it's like a rice dish, okay? So it's like the rice, right? And then minus three. I mean, without the remixer. Without the remixer, it's still like a rice dish, right? Now, if you like white rice, for example, that's pretty bland, right? But when you get the remixer to put things on it, it adds its own flavor. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you want it to be like that. Like, imagine if you're a chef and someone gives you something really oddly specific, right? It's like, well, I might not be able to make anything in my bag of things I can make that would go with this. But if someone gives you rice and you're a chef, you can probably come up with something, that would work well enough. So I think it's also for that, and the fact that you can't have these. You can have crazy sounds. It's kind of I think that's a big part. Like the tone is a big part of EDM, but maybe not certain aspects of crazy structure. Like if you don't have a chorus, for example, in your song, and it's like, how do I remix without a chorus? I've never done that before. Things like that would be a bit tough. So that's my guess. I think it makes a lot of sense. But outside of EDM, in other areas of electronic, I don't quite get it.
I like the analogy.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, next one. Sweet. So this one should be from Ben himself. So let me pull it up.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm going to pull it up for myself too. But so this is some art classical music. And the person basically... well, they give an interesting analogy, so I'll read it in short. But the main idea is in the title. Why is nobody creating Mahler or Wagner style music nowadays? He continues, or they continue. They're like Isaac Newton, they being Mahler and Wagner, or like Isaac Newton at the time, but a random college physics professor has the equivalent knowledge of Newton nowadays. Same goes for the music industry, but no one is composing this kind of music. Okay. And I'm not gonna really. I thought that was an interesting analogy talking about Newton, but not terribly relevant to what I'm going to say. The question itself is not that interesting. This is the question: if you open up our classical music, maybe every 3 or 4 posts, someone says, "Why is nobody writing like X?" Normally going to be like Mozart or Bach or Tchaikovsky or Beethoven. Okay, well here we have Mahler, Wagner. I'm not going to really worry about answering that so much because, I think we've done this in some ways in other arguing with Reddit discussions. But the thing I want to focus on is if you were to read through all the comments here and ignore all the ones that give you all the like reasons why would a composer want to imitate someone who's been dead for 200 years kind of thing, not exactly 200 years, but only 100 years from Mahler. He died in I think 1913, I want to say, maybe 1911. But if we did scroll through all the comments here, we get a lot of people saying what they do, that's film music. Have you not heard any film music? So that's what I'm going to respond to. A number of people saying that film music is Mahler and Wagner. Okay, and in particular, there's one comment here. I'll see if I can find the exact word the person says. But let's see. Yeah, people say, literally say, but they are. Just listen to film soundtracks. Oh, ever hear John Williams? Or let's see. There's another one I thought was really interesting. Oh, person says, have you not, first comment is, have you not gone to movies recently or in the last few decades? And another person down there says, has there been a renewed Wagnerian grandiosity to soundtrack score music since John Williams' score for Star Wars, Superman, Indiana Jones? Okay, so let's take that apart. I'm gonna say that's a really, really gross generalization. That if for all these people saying, have you not listened to any film music in the last decade, someone literally said, or last few decades, I'm going to say, have you listened to a lot of film music of the last few decades? Because, well, one, Mahler and Wagner are similar composers, but we can get rid of that notion first. They're not doing the same thing. Wagner may be large. Mahler, we might call it like maximalism. He's kind of taking everything to the furthest degree it can go in tonality without kind of ever getting to atonality, and large in every possible sense, in form, structure, instrumentation, length of piece, emotional content. He's definitely a musical descendant of Wagner, but they're not exactly the same. You could kind of say, it would be kind of like saying, why does nobody write like Beethoven and Wagner? They're clear, like there's a link between them, but not the same. Okay, so even if we accepted though that they are kind of this monolithic sound that is Mahler and Wagner, where is that in film music? Maybe so people like to say John Williams. People have done here all over the comments saying John Williams in particular. I kind of disagree. And if you go back to about almost a year ago, where I I was talking about some interviews that John Williams did, where he basically is like, I don't listen to Wagner. That's if there's any resemblance to Wagner, it's totally unintentional, because I basically don't really know his music. He listens to a lot of Mozart and Haydn, very different composers. I think he's listening to a lot of also like French impressionistic composers, and a lot of turn of the century British composers and their brass music. Just because something is large and symphonic, that is not the same thing as Mahler and Wagner. Okay, so that's I don't even think John Williams really sounds like them. And who writes like that in film music, if not John Williams? If maybe that's the closest we can get. No, that's not what music is. When music tends to, these days, when film music tends to be larger, okay, it's still going to be like hybrid stuff. All right, it's going to be a lot of synth and like non-acoustic instruments. Yes, does film music use leitmotifs in the same way that Wagner often used leitmotifs? Well, not in the same way necessarily, but yes. But that is not something that it's not Wagner's invention. We're not worshiping this like idea of Wagner. It's a concept in music. Wagner just expresses it in a very blatant and overt way. I would say that if I walked away, the last film I saw in a theater was Top Gun. Did that sound anything like Mahler or Wagner? Not at all. The last film I watched, I watched War Horse, John Williams. One of the most fantastic film scores I've ever heard. Not anything close to Mahler or Wagner. So I don't think that's true. Probably people saying that Mahler and Wagner, that's the sound of cinema. maybe in the 30s, late 30s, and early 40s, you could see that some of that in the golden age of Hollywood. I don't think that's accurate to say of film scores generally in the United States today.
Cool. What a takedown.
I know that it was probably too harsh to everyone involved in that thread. I all due respect and all apologies if I have offended you, but I don't know. It's just one of those things where, like, I pay a lot of attention to film music, and, like, I don't really see Mahler or Wagner, and large does not equal Mahler and Wagner. That's, like, yes, they are large, but and symphonic, but that's not even scratching the surface. That's like you're kind of like you take your nails and you're gonna scratch the surface, but you just kind of like, I'm gonna touch it. That's the most surface level, like, aspect of what those composers are. Maybe the most obvious aspect, but that's, like, the most surface level aspect of it.
Cool. Awesome. Want to take us out then, Ben? Outro?
Yeah. So if you are watching live, we are going to be doing our closing segment here. So bear with us, please. Anyway, thank you for listening to Mixed Media. This has been Arguing with Reddit Music Edition tonight. So thank you for listening to us, and make sure you check out Mixed Media on every podcasting platform out there, and join us on Discord. The link is on the right, pointing in the right direction, on the right side of the screen, to all the places you can access our podcast and our Discord. So make sure you like and follow us there if you want more conversations about music and video games and film and art in general.
Sweet. All right. Let's set up for the next one. Here we go.
Mixed Media Gaming.
Hello, and welcome to the Mixed Media Podcast gaming segment. Earlier, we just heard from Ben in his Arguing with Reddit segment, and Irving about the Transcendentals. So if you haven't watched those, you should. They're very good segments, and they should have been posted by now already if you're watching the recorded version. But yeah, I'll be reviewing Dirt Rally, giving a complete breakdown, sort of, about the award-winning game. All right. So I guess I'll give some background information. So Dirt Rally is sort of interesting in, like, how it fits into its series. So there's a series of Dirt Rally games, or to say there's a series of Dirt games. There are, like, I want to say 5 Dirt games. Glancing at their website real quick, it would seem so. Yes, there are a few Dirt games, and then they have this sort of like a subset called Dirt Rally. There's Dirt Rally and there's Dirt Rally 2.0. I'm reviewing Dirt Rally, the original one. Never played Dirt Rally 2.0, but I might in the future. I actually got this game. This is, I think, literally the first game I ever played on this computer. The reason being, not the one I'm using right now, the one that in the first segment I was saying broke, but it's because I believe it came free with my graphics card or something like that. So it's not a young game. There's AMD branding all over the game. You can have I think I have an AMD decal on my car and stuff like that. When did this game come out? This game came out in 2015. So yeah, and it came with my RX 590. So that probably makes about much sense, I guess. So yeah, all right. So the game is a rally racing game. It's a unique take on the whole racing experience. We've seen many racing simulators, but they all tend to be around, on-road track style races. Some of them focus on circuits, some of them are regular tracks, some of them different types of cars, whatever. This is very specifically not only off-roading, there's on-roading too, but mostly off-roading rally racing. I guess perhaps rally racing tends to be off-roading. I actually don't know. But yeah, I say it's one of the most unique experiences probably I've ever experienced in a game, and I'll get into why that is. So, firstly, the sort of core of its gameplay is a odd combination of active listening and like looking at where you're going. Now, if you don't know what rally racing is, I guess I'll give an overview of how it differs from other types of racing. So, rally racing, you tend to be in these sort of like look at the car and the oh, I guess you can't look at the car if you're on audio only, but it's like a I don't know how to explain it. They tend to be like small rugged vehicles. So I'll say small, fairly rugged vehicles. Think Subaru essentially, right? Yeah, like classic Subarus, pretty much, and their modern equivalents, I guess. And they go and they race on essentially normal, they're not tracks that are meant to be. They're built for tracks. They're actually like paths that exist or that were pre-existing, or streets that already existed, right? Usually they'll ask the government, hey, can you close like these roads? We're doing a little event, and they're like, okay, cool. And then they set up a track and they race down it. Now, here's the cool catch. Aside from that, that's kind of cool. But aside from that, here's the cooler catch: is that the racer, and I don't know if this is all rally races. I'm not 100% informed, but at least in some of them, at least in the dirt rally representation and the ones I've seen online, the racer is not actually familiar with the track. So you can imagine that if you're, I don't know, a Formula One racer, you study the track before you go on it. I don't know if they let you go on the track before.
They do, yeah.
They do. Okay, so yeah, the track, right? With rally racing, this is not the case. You're going in fairly blind. But rally racing is done in teams of two. So there's a driver, and there's, I don't know what you call him, a co-driver? I'll call him a co-driver. He doesn't drive, but he's in the car. The driver has no idea what was going on here. The co-driver, however, has been allowed, if I understand correctly, to go across the track and take notes on what he's seeing, essentially. And essentially, as it goes, you imagine that if you're driving a car and you're racing, you're going very fast, and you don't know what the track is like. This sounds like a recipe for disaster, a recipe to crash, essentially. But the co-driver is essentially feeding you information into your ears, live time. It's like, okay, so, is it left around here? Is it right over here? Oh, yeah, watch out for the bump over here. I saw it before. That kind of thing. Essentially a very sort of like a live like mapping going on. I believe in some rally racing scenarios, they might let the driver do essentially to preview the start of the course. In the game Dirt Rally, they call these shakedowns, and you're allowed to do 10 of them before. I've never done all 10. It seems kind of ridiculous, but you can do 10 of them on a given track. It's sort of a track group, and I'll explain what track groups are later. And essentially, this allows you to find it. It doesn't, give you the whole track. It gives you like the first, I don't know, maybe first like fifth of the track, maybe. So you don't really have that much information. It gives you a general vibe of what's going to be like, and it also lets you fine tune your car settings. So Dirt Rally has a lot of car settings like that are get very granular as you can unlock more settings you can change, and there are settings that way beyond my head. I don't ever change them. So like this, I don't really know how it's going to affect my car, and I feel like it's one of those things where I don't know if it's actually affecting me, or I think it's affecting me, and then I have to think about it a lot. So I only do very broad stroke changes, like brake force, for example. That is probably as deep as I'll get into it. But I'm not going to do the viscosity of the differential fluid. That is way too much for me. There's actually a thing in the game. You can do it on the front and the rear separately, but that's too much. So that is the general idea behind the game. I think overall it's a really cool concept. It certainly feels cool. It sounds cool, and it pretty much is cool. So I'd say it has probably one of the nicest learning experiences I've ever had of any game. So normally in a game, you have a tutorial, whatever. If I recall correctly, the game sort of just drops you into the race, and you have pretty good information, right? You're in a race based on, hopefully if you bought the title, it's a racing game. You are in a car, so it's time to race. Is a countdown, so you get the gist, right? And the tracks are, it's like you can't really go off the track usually in terms of it's not like multiple paths. Sometimes there kind of are, but your co-driver will tell you which way to go, so it's fine. And yeah, so it's essentially no tutorial, at least very minimal one as far as racing goes. And so I think what's very cool about it is it's definitely a very satisfying feeling of learning. And that comes from this sort of active listening that you're doing. And it's because when the co-driver speaks to you, it's not as simple as I said before as like turn left here, turn right here, there's a bump over here. It's some like code lingo that they use in like real rally racing that like shortens work. Like, it's like a shortening, right? Because things are happening really fast oftentimes. So I would say something like right 6, which I don't know if I want to say what that means because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who wants to play the game. I mean, you'll probably figure it out within a reasonable amount of time, but I'm not gonna say it. You can probably make guesses out, honestly, at this point. But they're more like interesting things, like what's the difference between a right 1 and a square, or sorry, yeah, a right 1 and a square right, for example, an acute right, a hairpin right, all these things, and these things are, I think at the start tend to be when you're going fast. These things. It becomes a lot sometimes. Sometimes it's pretty relaxed, and it's like, okay, this is a good pace of information coming to my brain. I'm reacting appropriately. And what's interesting is that you really have to trust the co-driver, and you can't trust your eyes anymore. It's like a weird balance where like you're understanding that your co-driver knows more than you do. So even if it looks like there is no turn ahead, and this is a turn, you should slow down, even if there's nothing in the way. Because if you don't, you're going to go like crashing into something. I've done that way too many times. Where like, I mean, he says it's a turn, but like, I don't see one yet. So and I keep going at full throttle, and then usually it does not end up well. So you really have to, but at the same time, you get certain situations where you might not know what your co-driver said. Sometimes the dude is rattling off things really fast in certain circumstances where it's command after command after command after command, and they will stack commands. So they'll say like maybe they say right 6 now, and they'll say they'll say what's after that before you pass the right 6 along. So you have a sort of like almost like a line. If you imagine what's on the screen. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's rally racing on. Is this dirt rally or is this rally racing in general? It's real. Yeah, okay. Well, you can see how intense it is. You see these people have no idea where they are going. And that person crashed somewhat. That's kind of common, going off road accidentally and stuff like that. Yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, sometimes they're rattling off these instructions really fast, and you sort of have to kind of like try to keep them in your brain as you're going, and it can get really hard sometimes where you're turning left and right and whatever, and trying to think about where your car has to be, because your car is not the most, if you're off-roading, your car is not the most controllable thing in the world, right? You're also thinking about having to actually control the really fast vehicle in the really narrow dirt road, right? As this guy is rattling off instructions, and sometimes you get lost. Also, car flipping is not uncommon, by the way. This is it's a fairly standard practice.
Yeah, if you didn't see, just then the car just absolutely flipped on the screen, and I was shocked.
Yeah, those cars I'm pretty sure tend to be fairly safe, actually. I guess you could expect that. But I've seen some pretty nasty crashes, and the person just gets out, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's fine," average day at the office. But yeah, so. Yeah, so that's really the big challenge, is trusting the co-driver, but also integrating, his knowledge with what you see, and sort of balancing that, and like, okay, how much do I lean on the co-driver? Probably should be a lot, but not fully, right? Because you can't play this game with your eyes closed, right? There's definitely useful information when you're looking, because he might say, oh, there's a turn coming up, but being able to see it as well. I mean, if you don't see it, you should trust them, right? But if you do see it, then you can make more minute adjustments. Like, okay, I can probably gun it a bit longer, or maybe I should slow down. Oh yeah, I think I should. Sometimes the co-driver will actually say that is you might say caution before an instruction, which usually it probably means you should probably slow down. that the road is not looking too good in front of you, and stuff like that. So there's some good things. What about some unfortunate things about this game? So okay, I mentioned track groups before. The way the game works is that there are a set of, I call them track groups. I think they probably might refer to them as locations, for example. There's a Welsh location. There's a German location, for example. There are various locations, right, for that tracks are set in. And each location will have multiple tracks, I think it'll be somewhat similar, tend to have the same sort of road conditions, stuff like that. But they're shaped differently, obviously. Now, what this means, now the way this works is that in the normal career mode, you are forced to go through these tracks in order, right? So you play through your entire track group, then you're given a new track group, and you have to play the entire thing, and you keep going over and over again. This I find highly undesirable. It was cool at first, until you get to some of the really undesirable track groups, where it is pain for half an hour. It's half an hour of raw, like, I don't want to play this anymore. I think, is it Finland? I think it's a Scandinavian location. I think it might be Finland, where the ground is icy and it is snowy, and I cannot play it. It is hard. I feel like I've been thrusted into something that's it's just too hard for me. I'm not there yet. Even though I've played this game a pretty significant amount, it's just not. I think I don't know what the secret is. You can take it really slow, or you have to really be mindful about your drifting, because drifting is a pretty normal occurrence, right? I mean, it's especially exacerbated in the snowy map, but even on like pavement, you'll be drifting around corners. As you can see potentially from the videos, that they're drifting, and drifting, it seems to be encouraged. It is the normal way. You do not slow down. You simply hit the handbrake and turn. So I think I kind of get why perhaps they would require such rigid sort of track location orders, potentially because maybe this is more realistic to real life, for example, and they want to make this a more simulation type game, and so this is how it is in real life. If you don't like the track group, it kind of sucks. You got to learn it, right? But also might be to save the players from themselves. So in my case, I know that the locations were unlocked. I played a lot of Germany, probably because Germany is pavement, which means you can go very fast, and it's very fun. There's just a nice element of speed. Now, that being said, is it really a good idea for me to play Germany 24/7? Probably not. It's probably better if I balance it, and I experience, a little bit of everything, because I probably would get bored of Germany without potentially even realizing it. You know what I'm saying? So maybe it's more of a case of saving the player from themselves. So I don't know. I wish maybe you had like a one skippable location sort of thing you can do, where I say I don't want to play in Finland or whatever it is. Like it's awful. I can't do it. But give me everything else. I'm fine with that. And there are a lot of tracks. And what makes that interesting is the quantities. That means that unless you consistently restart on a certain map, it's hard to learn the maps, because once you get back in the rotation, you've probably forgotten it, which means that all the code driver instructions are going to be fresh again. It's going to feel like it's new. So you're not really going to, maybe you remember a little bit, it's kind of vaguely coming back to you, but there are probably a lot of curveballs that are going to, forget about these certain turns, and these certain turns are particularly nasty, or you can go flat out here, and forget about a lot of that. So that's pretty much it for the gameplay. As far as things like audio goes, there's pretty much almost no music, and I think it's a fair choice, because, when you're rally racing, you kind of want to hear the code driver say things, and what's very important is the sound of the car. And the sound design of the car is very good. The sound design can give you some good feedback on specifically when you're drifting or not. Now, if you were in a real car and you're rally racing, I'm sure you will feel, when you were drifting or not. This does not necessarily come through well digitally, where you can't really feel anything, right? So sometimes you may be drifting, it's like, am I really drifting? Now, if you're playing in the third person perspective, where you can play where you follow the camera over the car, you're drifting. You can just see the car, you can see the ground, you can see if it's, if you are driving, according to the alignment, if your wheels are aligned with the direction you're going. That being said, I play in first person mode from a cockpit cam, if you will, for a majority of the game. So, from there, it can be a bit tough to like, am I drifting? Because once the wheels start drifting, maybe you might. I hope I'm not saying this wrong, because I think this makes sense to my brain as how the physics works. Is that there is static friction and what's the other one?
Kinetic friction.
Yeah, right. That's what I was thinking. But I was like, I don't know if that's the right word. Yeah, kinetic friction. Okay, static friction is like when everything is, your tires are like, you're not drifting, right? You have pretty good friction, right? Now, the moment your tires start drifting a little bit, they're like you get into this kinetic friction stage where the force of friction is a lot lower, right? Which, okay, that's kind of obvious. But what this means is that it is kind of hard to get back into a state of static friction, pretty much. So you can be drifting a little bit, and you might not be realizing it because you're fairly aligned with how your wheels are facing. So you're just drifting a little bit, right? And you don't realize it. Now the next time you go to make a big turn, you were already drifting and you had no idea, and because your car had a hard time going back into that static friction state, and so you start drifting around the corner. You thought your wheels were nice and locked with the ground, but they were not. So that's where the audio design comes into really handy. You can hear things like rocks hitting the side of your car as you slide through gravel and stuff like that. If you're on more Germany pavement, for example, you hear obviously the tires screeching against the pavement. You can hear there's also satisfying things like the dirt crushing beneath your car. You can hear the squeakiness of your car parts as your car rumbles around and bounces, stuff like that. And the car engine is a really great source of feedback. One of the statistics about the car that I change pretty frequently is the gear ratio length, and essentially, the shorter the gear ratio length, or I think it's called, the shorter it is, the faster your acceleration will be, but the lower your top speed will be. And if you make a longer gear ratio, it's the opposite. Your acceleration will be longer, but your top speed will be faster. Now, different maps might cater towards different things. Different racing styles might cater towards different things. You can get more granular. I think you can literally change the gear ratios for every single gear, but I don't want to do that. So hearing your motors when it comes to that is really important, because you can hear this. You can almost sort of hear when you reach your top speed, or when you're nearing it, by the sound it makes, essentially. Or when you're in the high acceleration phase, you can just hear, when you're in first gear, second gear, you know the sound. But not, being able to hear that instead of having to look at the number, it's very nice. I'll say if you're using, if you're playing this, you probably should use a controller and not a keyboard. One, it's a racing game, but also you get nice rumble feedback. And that is very useful to determine with the problem I was talking about before with sliding and whatnot, and not being able to see that visibly and not be able to feel it in your seat. You can feel it through the controller. And I think I have it I don't know if I changed it on my controller settings specifically or in the game settings, but I have I boosted the rumble feedback. And when I was writing these notes, I was wondering that might have been a bad thing, because I might be sort of reaching a clipping state where my controller cannot rumble anymore and I'm losing information. I don't actually know if I increase my headroom when I increase the clipping amount, or if I'm literally just pushing it to a dead end, which would be unfortunate. But yeah, rumble controls are a very important part. So I would suggest that. And I can imagine it'd be a lot better in terms of feedback if I had a proper steering wheel with vibration or feedback, proper feedback. Yeah, it's pretty much all I'd say about the game. Pretty good overall. It's just I don't want to play Finland anymore. That's pretty much the biggest complaint.
Finland. Insert SpongeBob reference here. Cool. I've actually played a little bit of Dirt Rally as well, for probably a total of 30 minutes. I think I just grabbed the controller from you or something like that. I don't remember. But it was quite fun. And then I looked up rally racing videos afterwards, and I was like, these people are insane. There's no way you would get me to do this. Zero chance. But it is cool nonetheless. Sweet. And want to take us out for the night, Nathan? We've had a good showing. We had the largest audience we've ever had on Discord. They're gone now, except for protocols. Shout out to you.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, we had at 1.4 people listening on Discord, which is a new phenomenon. So shout out to y'all. Yeah, and we had a good amount of people come in and out on Twitch as well. So perhaps that is rolling forward too, which is cool. So yeah, shout out to all of y'all. Especially shout out before I let Nathan roll us out. Shout out to 99 Crime and Rob Sharma. If you want to join their ranks and get shouted out, you can go to mixedmedia.locals.com. You get access to the live whiteboard that way, which is awesome because you get to doodle and insult us and say all kinds of wonderful or terrible things to an extent on the live whiteboard that you'll get access to by supporting us on there. I'm really surprised that 909 Crime has not taken advantage of this feature. I feel like it's kind of made for him, but that's okay. But if you would like the opportunity to do so, you can go to mixedmedia.locals.com and get access to those features. All right, now Nathan, you can take us.
All right, thanks for watching this incredibly long podcast this time around. It's been a while.
Had to make up for
it. What would you say? Oh yeah, to make up for last time where we did not show up. So there you go. It's almost as if nothing happened. So yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking us this long, and thanks for being a great audience. So do all the things Irving said, and we'll see you next time.
All right, see ya.
Thanks for watching and listening.
Thanks for watching.
Oh, awkward. Okay, there we go. Oh, very awkward. I'm ruining this outro. Let's try that one more time.
Look, tell a man no trouble. I don't want beef, man. I just want vibes. Big man like me, no need for the telephone hype. I got too much getting online. One rule, then dead I'm on site. Wrong move, I bet they gon' ride. No need for the telephone hype, nah. No need for the snoozing. Big whip outside, I'm cruising. Big